Welcome back to 60 Plus Uncensored. I'm your host, Seb Fry, and my guest today is Emmanuel LaRoche, who was born in Versailles, France, and is today, if you can believe it, a New Jersey-based author, podcaster, and flavor expert who has spent more than 30 years in the food and beverage industry, and he is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to food and drink around the world. So without further ado, let's get into it. Emmanuel, thank you so much for joining me here today on 60 Plus Uncensored. I'm very excited to have you on the podcast today. Now, you are not yet a household name in America. So for the people who aren't familiar with you yet, could you share a little bit about yourself and tell us all who is Emmanuel LaRoche?
Okay, sure. But first, thank you very much for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate it. So Emmanuel LaRoche, obviously you can tell from my accent and as well from my name that even if I live in New Jersey, I am not from New Jersey. I am originally French. I was born in France and I moved to the US 23 years ago. So now I'm French and American. My day job, I am in charge of marketing for a company that manufacture natural flavor extracts and natural ingredients, for food and the beverage industry. And then my passion is about obviously food. So I have a large network of, chefs and pastry chefs and mixologists here in the US. So I launched a podcast to talk about food in 2018 called Flavors Unknown. Which people can listen to any podcast platforms, and then as well, I published my first book in 2022 called Conversations Behind the Kitchen Door, which is really about talking about what's the food culture in the U.S. today. And then just recently, I published my new book, my second one, in February this year, and it's called A Taste of Madagascar. So still about food, but this time food coming from the island of Madagascar that people probably have no idea it's coming from there, but there's a lot of chefs around the world that are using some of those ingredients in their kitchens. So that's in a nutshell who I am.
All right, well, I got to ask, why would you move from France, which is very lovely, to New Jersey? Not that New Jersey isn't lovely, of course.
Even if you learn and hear that, in fact, I moved from the south of France on the French Riviera to Jersey. Not the Jersey Shore, but, to Jersey. So people
It's
said,
the Garden State. I know.
Are you nuts? And no. It's, in fact, I had the chance to... when I finished my universities in France, I had an internship in the US, in Wisconsin at that time, and I really loved the pace of the business. And I said, hey, one day I would really like to come back and work in the US. And so I had to go back to France after my 1 year, and did a lot of things, in Europe. And I had the opportunity to come back, and the company I work for, still the same company now, offered me to transfer me to the US, and the experience that was supposed to last 6 years turned into 23, and here we are. So I decided to stay. My children obviously, love as well the culture here, so they are probably more Americans than French, even if they do speak French, at home. But
well, I'm glad they can speak French. My wife is Peruvian, and
okay.
We don't. My older kid can kind of speak Spanish. My younger one does not really. So it's really great that you've been able to keep that. So you say that you know a lot about chefs, and like here on the podcast, we've talked quite a bit about nutrition, but we've never really talked about food per se, other than like how terrible most of the food is here in America for your health because it's like processed, ultra processed, right? Just disgusting slime.
Yes.
But I don't know that much about cooking, but you know what I love? I love those cooking shows. I love Top Chef, and I just watched America's Culinary Cup, and then like Next Gen Chef on Netflix. I just finished watching that. And they are always talking about French cooking as being like the gold standard of cooking. Why is it that French cooking is like considered the gold standard of cooking?
Because I think it's based on like, history. I think that France was the first country to really structure, recipes and organize recipes, having, what they call the brigade, in the kitchen that was, literally inspired from the military, and brought into the kitchen. And I think that, if you look at other countries like Mexico, for instance, that has a fantastic, food culture, but there was not really anything that really, memorized, in writing and organized, recipe by topics, by themes, by ingredients, and so on. You had to wait a much longer period of time in order to have people doing this. So I think this is probably one explanation. I'm not saying this is the only explanation, but so there's been a long tradition, of cooking in France, coming from the Middle Age time, the kings and the queens of France. Food has been always very important for French people, taking the time to appreciate food, and I think that that's part of it. So there was as well, instruction that was put in place, and then people from other country went to France to learn, how to cook. So, but when you look at China, or when you look at Japan, or you look at Italy, the food is, amazing as well, and there's a rich history. And I'm glad that today, in fact, a lot of chefs are going, in those countries as well to get some, like culinary instructions. So it's not only France, and I think that yes, you have that positive aspect, and France is always very proud, obviously of of their cooking, and the projection of French cooking across the globe. But I really love as well the way how American chef, and I'm not talking about, what you were referenced before, which is like processed food. I'm talking about really people cooking in their kitchen, and chefs, like celebrating, ingredients, from the US. And I love the way how they cook, because they are not really, let's say, having like this heritage of a long history of French cooking, where sometimes it's difficult to draw outside of the line, if you know what I mean, and really to experiment. So in France, things has to be done a certain way. Here in the US, even if some of those American chefs have been French trained, they now are exploring, with like other ingredients and techniques coming from, from Peru, for instance, or, which has a fantastic as well, culinary heritage from China, from Japan, and of course from Spain. But so I think this is the reason why, sorry for my long answer, but it's the reason why I think that French cooking had, prevailed for so many years, century, I should say. Yes.
Well, that is interesting that you mentioned about the brigade, because you do see that, on these shows all the time, like when they have a team thing, they do organize this brigade, and it's very impressive to see what they're doing. I thought you were going to say the ingredients, right? Like the ingredients have to be like the most important thing, and the climate in France is so sublime, right? Like it's an agricultural country, right? The quality of the food there, it's just outstanding, because you use so many like locally sourced ingredients, and
Sure.
and there's so many of them, right?
But you have it here. You have it here in the U.S. as well. When you look at California, this is the cornucopia of like the U.S. With fantastic veggies, with a lot of proteins. You have the Appalachian that has like amazing ingredients. You have the Memphis area that are fantastic for mushroom. So there's everywhere in the U.S. you have as well fantastic produce, and it's just a question of people spending the time and researching. And it's really interesting, because when you're talking about we are eating badly in the US, and that's the reason why I wrote this first book, because I hear that so often, going back to France every year with my families and friends and the friends of my family members. When I said to them, I have a podcast talking about food in the US, and they're like, why? I mean, American people eat hot dogs and pizza and burgers. Why do you want to have something about food? And I'm like, you guys, you're driving me nuts because you are coming to the US because you are really, you love, like, the national parks. You love to go to LA, to San Francisco, to New York, and so on. But the first things you go to when you go and eat in the US is to, like, the next fast food chains that you can find. And I'm like, that drives me nuts. I mean, you are continuing this story, and if you would spend the same amount of time that you are researching, to explore the landscape, like the really the places like in the US that you want to discover, into searching for great restaurants and chefs into those cities, you will eat like really good food. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but we like to go to Taco Bell. I'm like, whatever. I mean,
Well, yeah, it was funny. Last year we were in Singapore and we went on a tour. Like, I lived in Malaysia for a year and I was in Singapore many times. This is like 25, 30 years ago. So I took the family over there because I love it. And we went on a food tour in Singapore, and the lady who was giving the tour, she was like lamenting, she's going like, actually, our kind of like our restaurant industry is kind of dying because like the people here, they want to go to Burger King. They want to go to like McDonald's, right? Like for them, that is the exotic thing. And
Sure.
I'll never forget how the first time I went to Malaysia in 1995, when I lived there for a year, I got to like the food court, the amazing food court. And then at the other end of the food court, there was a Kentucky Fried Chicken. And they had like 10 cash registers, and every cash register had like 20 people behind it, right? Like everyone was like, you could have all this amazing food over here, or Kentucky Fried Chicken. And they're like, I could not believe it, how successful Kentucky Fried Chicken was. And I do get the appeal. And then of course you have like Shake Shack, right?
Sure,
But Shake Shack, that's founded by the guy who did what is it in Manhattan, right? I mean, like it's like it's like an upscale like a fast food place.
Yeah, it is, yeah, for sure. But yeah, but if you can find like in Manhattan some like amazing restaurant by chefs that are working with farms, like in from New Jersey or from the tri-state areas. And, here I live in New Jersey, and, people have this image of New Jersey of like like the Chemical Valley and, it's near the Hudson. But, I am like maybe 20 minutes west of this, so going towards Pennsylvania, but still not far from there. And then you have like farmland, and I have a restaurant over there that have a concept where, in fact, the chef decided to cook with ingredients that they can find like 8 miles radius around their restaurant, because they have farms like raising lambs, and they have like farms, or having like fresh veggies and so on. So if you spend the time, you can find places. You have plenty of farmers markets where you can eat like fantastic produce, and you don't have to go to your grocery store where you are buying tomatoes in January, which is insane. So but you know what I mean? It's the idea is like the produce have a seasonality, and not every state in the US have the chance to, because some seasons are not the same from one state to another because of the climate. But you need to eat really produce in the peak of the season. So that's where usually you have fantastic taste. So that's what I talk about in the first book is spend the time to engage with farmers and farmers markets around where you live, and you're going to discover fantastic produce. And people, farmers love to talk about what they do, and same thing like chefs, they love to talk about themselves and and the great food that they do. So.
Well, farmers do like talking about farming. I don't actually know that many chefs, really. I don't know if I know any chefs. I'm sure I've met some. But
where are you based?
I am based in Silicon Valley. And
in Silicon Valley, okay.
So there's a lot of really great food. I mean, like San Francisco is loaded with amazing food.
Sure,
No question about it. It is extremely expensive. It's crazy, but like I mean, so I hear from like some because I go into Reddit all the time, right? And I read.
Sure.
Have you been on Reddit? I know I love Reddit, and like there's people from
Sure.
all over the world talking about all kinds of things, and like sometimes it's like, oh yeah, like America, like food in America sucks, and then you have people going like people from overseas will say like, well, actually not really. They'll say like San Francisco actually is like a
Sure.
food mecca. That the reason why is because incomes are so high there that people can afford to pay ridiculous prices for like the finest ingredients and the best chefs.
Yeah, but at the same time, it makes me smile all of this because you have like people that think that food is expensive and going to a restaurant is expensive. But I really would like, and I love Starbucks, so I have no issue with this. But I would love to know many dollars they are spending on their lattes per week. When you go to a Starbucks or you go to a nice like third wave coffee place in the US now, I went this earlier today. I ordered a large coffee, with, I don't remember what's, syrup in there. I spent almost $10. And so, I mean, come on. So, it's like, if you go to a restaurant and then you have like a main dish, which is around $30, it's basically, and it's real food and it's good food. And so, I mean,
right. It's all relative.
It's relative. It's all about what's your priority and, and what you focus on and what you like. So, but anyhow, yes, we know there's, life is expensive. It's getting more expensive. And then people are criticizing, the price of certain restaurants, but they have as well to make sure that they are buying those ingredients, and they have to make sure that it's difficult for them not to transfer that into the price of the dish for the customers.
Right. Well, speaking of Starbucks, actually, I think Starbucks has my absolute favorite fast food item in America, which is the Impossible Breakfast Sandwich. Have you had that thing?
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
I love those things. Those things are like, I mean, I guess they're not that healthy for you, right? But nevertheless, they are delicious. So if anyone who's listening to this, if you're hungry and you see a Starbucks in the morning, get an Impossible meat breakfast sandwich. They are delicious. But you mentioned seasonality, right? Like buying food in season. Like I think that's one reason why our diet is so screwed up right now is because like people are eating like unfresh foods that are flown in or like processed or whatever from other times of the year. How important is it
pick up
to
green, pick up green, so yeah.
It's never out of season to eat green food. That's true. So, but how important is it to eat seasonally? What do you know about that?
I mean, it's important from a taste experience standpoint because if you buy your tomatoes in January that are coming probably from the south part of the hemisphere, and those tomatoes are picked like very very green, and they are not ripe on the plant. So you don't have the maximum of of the flavor profile from that tomato. So when you wait the month of in the summer in Jersey, and you have the famous tomato from Jersey. Yes, it is something. It is tomato from Jersey are famous, and then they are amazing. And if you do a salad with mozzarella and basil, I mean, do it in the summer. Don't do it in January. That's crazy. Eat something else in January. So no, but but if you want to eat, you were referencing the French cuisine and so on, and you thought that I will talk about the produce. Is that this is what's happened over there? It's like you eat produce in the season, so that's what maybe makes as well French food that good, or Italian food that good, or Spanish food.
Right. What makes it so good? So you mentioned that you came to New Jersey for working for a corporation. You've been there for 23 years, and you still work at that corporation, right?
Yeah.
Can you say who you work for? Is that a secret, or is that
no? It's not a secret. No. I'm a no. It's a company that is not unknown for most of. Because it's behind the scene. It's a company called Symrise, Symrise, and it's a global company, again, that manufacture extracts, natural extracts, and that's the, for food and the beverage industry. So that's the reason why I went to Madagascar, because Madagascar is the island that produces 80% of the vanilla beans, in the world. 80% of the vanilla bean comes from Madagascar. And then we have a whole team of people there, because we like to be vertically integrated, for like I would say flavors or produce that are very important for certain categories. So vanilla is critical for ice creams and desserts and baking. So then the importance is working with the farmers in Madagascar to make sure that we help them in the cultivation of the beans. Same thing, like we spend the time with the growers of orange and lemons in Argentina and Brazil, and as well in the south of Italy, because citrus is a key ingredient for beverage. So that's and I can cite maybe a third one, which is for culinary. Onion is critical for any culinary preparation. And so we work a lot with the farmers in Germany, on helping them with agronomes that we have in our teams and so on, to make sure that we help them, getting the best production of onions for us to do our onion extracts, for soups and dishes and all of that, in later. So yeah, so that's what, and I'm in charge of marketing for the US.
Okay, so Simrise, is that a French company, or where is Simrise based?
It's a German, and as well, so it's in Germany and France, but yes, but originally it's a German company.
Okay, and so your title, you're head of marketing, you said?
I'm the VP of marketing and sensory consumer science and innovation for the company in the US.
Right. Okay. Wow, that's really cool. So, and so you're like, how old are you? I understand you're just over 60. Is that correct?
I am 62. Yeah, I'm 62 years old.
You're 62 years old, and you look like you're doing great. And like,
thank you.
Well, I mean, like I could just see you on the picture, but
yes,
you look like you're, what you look like. You look like you're a happy guy, right? And people who are happy, I think, you're doing good if you're happy, because not everybody is, not that many people are. But here you are, you're 62, and you have this great job. And I want to talk about Madagascar, because the only things I know about Madagascar are it's a risk territory on that game, and vanilla comes from there. And it sounds like you've been there a lot of time. So I want to ask you about that. But you're working this job, great job probably, and like a lot of people might be looking at like retirement now, but it doesn't really seem like you are, because here you are, you're writing books, you're doing a podcast, right? I mean, like it seems like you're kind of like picking up the pace a little bit, not actually like slowing down. So tell us a little bit about your journey to like branching out from your 30-year career at Simrise into all the stuff you're doing now.
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think it is linked to, everything happened. You can relate to that, and a lot of people listening as well, is that you have life stages, and so I have 3 children, and now they are an age where my youngest is 27. So the idea is that spending time with them when they were younger and so on, and then there's one moment that happens that in fact suddenly they became independent, and raise them for them to become independent and to be independent. So then you start to say like, okay, so now I need as well to get other activities, and I love to travel, and that's fine. But I think it will be interesting for me not to have only my work as my main focus, but, there's other things. I'm passionate about food. I'm passionate about travel. And that's how it started, and the idea I had in my mind, to launch a podcast to talk about food. In 2018, I said, I think it's the right time for me to do that. And I publish only every other week because, it's on top of my day job. So I wanted to make sure that it was, I keep the frequency. And so now I have 200 and whatever, 7, 8 episodes. And then, and when I started, having those episodes of the podcasts, then someone in my work said, why don't you write a book? Because you have a lot of content here and you're always passionate about food and everyone comes to you for advice where to eat, when we travel in different parts of the country. So you have a huge network. And I'm like, sure, I'll do that when I have 5 minutes. And then, but somehow she put like that into the seed in my mind. And I think it was probably a year before the pandemic when I started to, let's see if I can structure an idea of a book and what it could be about and what story I would like to tell. And then I used the pandemic, in fact, to write the book. So it took me 22 months to write the manuscript. And I discovered that I liked the process. I didn't know if I would, but I did, and I had the chance to find a writing coach, and as well to have like an agent that wanted to represent me, and then as well that agent found like a publisher for me. So that everything, all the pieces of the puzzle came together. So. And that's how that's how it started. So I think it's the idea of maybe I mean I don't retirement doesn't mean anything to me. It's like I know I love. I work in an area which is something that I'm passionate about, and then I had the possibility to branch out, keeping that same passion, with the podcast and and with the books. So I think this is this is important for me.
Right. Well, if you're doing something you love, like why stop, right? And
Sure.
clearly you do love it. So I love food. Actually, we were talking before we came on the podcast. We were writing, and I was like, I love food too, right? I mean, like I'm all about food.
Sure.
But another thing that I'm all about is I'm all about travel. I mean, for an American,
Yep.
I'm very well traveled. I've been to like 54 countries or something like that.
Oh, wow.
This summer. Yeah, this summer we're going to. Actually, I worked for a French company, as a matter of fact, a long time ago. We're going to go to Turkey and Crete and Croatia and back to Amsterdam, which I've been to many, many times. So,
Wow.
but not for a long time. I've not been to Europe in over 20 years. Not since I've been married. So, I've been to Europe many times, but it's been a
Sure.
long time. So I love traveling, and but I've never traveled to Madagascar. And it sounds like you have quite an intimate relationship with Madagascar. I don't think that many people listening to this podcast know that much about Madagascar. What can you tell us about Madagascar?
Sure. So, first of all, it is a real country because when I started to say that I was writing about Madagascar, people said to me, "The movie?" I'm like, "No, not the movie. It's a real island. In fact, it's the fourth largest island on the planet. It's at 250 miles on the east coast of Africa. So it's there's a Mozambique channel between the country of Mozambique in Africa, and then there's Madagascar. It's the size of Texas, just to give an idea of the size of the island. Very rich landscape. There's a chain of mountains in the middle of the island. So there's some highlands, which is high elevated, where the capital, is Antananarivo. And then after that, you have obviously a lot of lush tropical forests, in the north, west, and east. And you have fantastic, beach and the coast on both sides of on the island. And then it's a little bit more, I would say, arid and dry, in the south part of, of the island. But yeah, so I went to Madagascar because of vanilla. I launched in the context of my work a contest with American chef using our vanilla extract to create recipes, like dishes and desserts and drinks, cocktails, and so on. And I took the 3 winners to to Madagascar in 2022. That was, in fact, my first trip, and closer to the source of vanilla. So I took Elizabeth Faulkner, who is a chef based in LA. I took chef Michael Gulota from New Orleans, and then the mixologist Shannon Tibet, with at that time was just coming out of like the beverage director position at Death and Company in New York City, which is a famous bar. So we went there for vanilla. And when I landed there and spending time with chefs, in Madagascar and mixologists, I discovered that there's a lot of other ingredients like pink peppercorn. Madagascar is in fact the second producer of pink peppercorn after Brazil. There is endemic black pepper, which grows only on the island, that has a fantastic citrusy note. There is caviar. There's 11 tons of caviar produced in Madagascar. There is a lot of honey because 90% of the flora and the fauna exist only, from Madagascar, only exists on the island. And there's beautiful different kind of blossom that produce like unique like honey profile, like mangrove honey, lychee honey, primary forest honey, and then there's a lot different kind of like proteins, and like the zebu meat, where zebu, which is like the hunchback cattle, which is very famous, in Madagascar, and they do a lot of stews and skewers and carpaccios of that meat. And so I discovered all of this, and I'm like, oh, and I heard that chefs in Europe were using some of those ingredients, and then the chef that I had with me from the US were like, oh my gosh, that profile of pink peppercorn, it's so, amazing compared to what I'm used to. So I'm like, I cannot keep that to myself. I need to write about it and share it with, other. So that's how the idea of writing the book came about.
Right. So how many times have you been to Madagascar?
So 3 times. I had 3. I went to 22. I went back in June 23, and then I went back in May 25. So last year.
So, wow. Okay. Was Madagascar ever colonized by anybody, or is it?
Oh yeah. Yes, the French people. It was a French colony until 1960. They became independent in 1960. So there's French language is still, spoken.
Is that the official language? Is French?
That's the second. That's the second language. Malagasy is the first language, which is taking the roots from like Indonesia. It's really interesting because I had as well this belief that, because it's so close from Africa, that it's very connected to, Africa. I will see profile of people, close to the people from Africa. And there's the influence from Africa, but as well, big influence coming from Indonesia. In fact, the first settlers came from Indonesia. So the language is more rooted to Indonesian language. And when you land in Madagascar and at the capital Antananarivo, and you start seeing people on the street and so on, you see a very diverse, I would say, profile of individuals that you can feel that there is influence from Asia, and both from Asia and from Africa.
Yeah, it's interesting. When we were in Malaysia last year, we went to Taman Negara, which is like their big national park there. And inside Taman Negara, they have like these tribes that, tribal people, and they are African. It's interesting, right? They don't look like anybody else in Malaysia.
Wow.
They are from Africa. Apparently, they're actually literally from Africa, and they've been living there for thousands of years, right? They migrated across, and that's where they live. The world's a much smaller place maybe than we give it credit for. So it sounds really amazing, Madagascar. How many people live there?
30 millions. Oh, yeah. 30 millions about.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And there's as well 18 tribes, so like all around the island still, where in fact some are very much involved in taking care of those herds of, hunchback cattle, especially, in the south part of the country. So I had the chance, on my first trip to connect with a gentleman called Nirin, and he became a very good friend of mine. And when I shared with him after traveling back on my first trip that I would love to write a book about his island, he was so excited that, in fact, when I came back in 2023, he took vacation, and he became my personal guide and introduced me to farmers and beekeepers and entrepreneurs, around the island that I had the chance to, to interview. And in 25, he took me to the south part of the island where those tribes, are located, because I wanted to finish the chapter on, on the zebu, so on this hunchback cattle. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I've seen those cattle in pictures and whatnot, and man, I'm thinking like if Madagascar is as big as Texas, it takes a long time to get around Madagascar, right? I mean, like it's a long drive from north to south, must be, huh?
Yes, especially because the state of the roads are not that fantastic, and there's a lot of like dirt road. And I tell you, like, if people are curious and they look at the map of Madagascar, there's a a city called Tulear on the south, west side of the country, so in the direction of Africa. And then on the other side, there is Fort Dauphin, which is on the southeast, and they are, on both sides, both coasts, and it took us 30 hours, 30 hours to drive from the west side to the east side because the road are, in fact, I guess that sometime we created the roads. So, so my spine still remember those.
Wow.
Yeah, so we didn't stop only for bio breaks and a little bit of food, but we didn't sleep, and we did that into one like really 30-hour ride. So
Well, that sounds really exciting and like a lot of fun. Is the tourism industry not very heavily developed in Madagascar?
So there is a bit, but it's still being developed because of those. I mean, obviously people can fly, from the capital to both of those cities that I mentioned. But it's encouraged to not to travel on your own, but more something organized, or even like on my first trip, I stayed a bit longer than the chefs and people from my team. They flew back from the US. I stayed an extra week. And because I wanted to discover some national parks, and then the alley of the baobab tree, which are very famous. And but I said, okay, no problem. I rent a car, I take a flight. I say, whoa, 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 no, 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 no. We are going. We book a flight, that's fine, but you are going to have a car with a chauffeur, with a driver, and that person is going to drive you around. And there's no way that you do it on your own. For safety reason. So.
Oh, is it a dangerous place? Is it a lot of
I
crime
mean,
or
it's not
kidnappings or?
Yeah, no, not kidnappings, but there is in some area of the island some bandits that are organized. In fact, that are usually they are doing this like really within people living on the islands, and they are stealing, in fact, those hunchback cattle from other villages or other tribes, and sometimes if they don't find those cattle to steal, then sometimes they then stop some convoy of I would say 4-wheel drive, some tourists, and and then we'll ask for their computers and cameras and that type of things. But I heard about it, I never witnessed it, and on my 3 trips I never had any issue at all. So I never I've felt I heard about it, and I felt the tension in one of the trip because my driver was a bit nervous, and I wanted to know why, and later he explained to me exactly that story. But I never otherwise experienced it personally.
Right, sure. So,
Which
so
is
I guess
better.
it's yeah, it's better. Is it pretty inexpensive? Like how much is like a hotel room at the beach in Madagascar?
Yeah, it's probably you can really find a nice hotel for probably $50, I would say. So yeah, it's
All right.
really inexpensive. The most expensive is the flight, because I live around. Yeah, it's far. It's like 8 hours for me from New York to Paris, and then Paris to Antananarivo is 10 hours. So it's a journey. And there's
all
another
day.
flight that can go through I think South Africa, and then you can, but it's still very long. Or there's probably Ethiopian airline that do something around like Abu Dhabi, or like there's but the main one is usually with Air France from Paris. So.
Right. Okay. All right. Actually, going there through South Africa sounds pretty interesting. I've never been anywhere in Africa, so that's like the one continent I've never been to, except from Antarctica. So
I've been to Kenya a long time ago, and then to Morocco. So I did a
all right. Well,
daughter
I want to go
that
to
trip
Morocco
there.
too. Morocco looks great. I want to eat some goat. So,
Yeah,
well, now we're talking about traveling, and so like a lot of people who are older, 60 plus uncensored, a lot of people who are
sure.
older, like they're retired, they like to go on food tourism, right? They like to go
Yeah,
around eating from place to place.
it is a big. It's a a big trend. In fact, it develops like everywhere.
So you've been around the
Yep.
world. Where's good to go? If you're over 60 and you want to go and eat some food that's not going to like tear a hole in you, like what do you recommend? What's a good place to go? Like
So
cities or
my
countries?
yeah. So I would say like in Latin America, I really love. People don't think about it, but I love Panama, and Panama City is a place that has a lot of chefs and with different influences because you have of course the Spanish influence, but then you have after that the influence coming from the slaves coming from Africa. So and then from you have influence from China as well. So it's very rich style of cuisine. So I would recommend. It's only and again, sorry, I mentioned New York because that's close to where I live. So, but it's only 5-hour flights, from New York, a direct flight. So it's very easy. So Panama City, people should go, and then if they are interested, they can take a 1-hour flight to go to Boquete, which is closer to the Costa Rica border, and there is as well a volcano here or there. And then it's very famous as well for coffee plantations. So the Geisha coffee, for instance, is there. And so if people are into, food, travel, and yeah, Boquete as well, there's a great, one or two great chefs, there. So Panama, something that top of my list. And of course, you were talking about Peru. I mean, Peruvian cuisine is one of the most trending cuisine here in the US at the moment. That's the one growing the fastest, in fact. And there's so many influences from the Spanish, from the Chinese with the Chifa cuisine there, and then the Nikkei cuisine with the Japanese influence. So one of my favorite cuisine is the Peruvian cuisine. So people travel to Lima and then go to Machu Picchu while you are there. But that's something good to do. And then in Europe, I still I love Barcelona. I love like Spain and Portugal. I think that that's the place I will go to. You were talking Turkey. In fact, I'm going to Istanbul. If the world is still stayed the same, but I will. I'm supposed to go there in May. So for the first time, never been to Istanbul. So I'm looking forward to it. So Istanbul there's a lot of good stuff to try from what I've read, and I'm going to experience that. What else?
Well, how about here in the United States? So most
Oh,
of our listeners are
sure.
Americans, probably. So
Sure.
what cities are good for food, and maybe just throw out some restaurants that people can go visit that you're familiar with that you think are really good.
Of course, sure. So I will go, first one, I will go to Austin. Austin is probably one of the most dynamic culinary scene here in the US. And I will go to a restaurant like Nixta Taqueria, which is a fantastic Mexican, place with wonderful tacos. I will go to Olame, Olamaie, which is a southern, influence. I will go to, gosh, I will come back. It's another Mexican place that I love. Why I cannot find it now that you put me on the spot here.
Sorry.
It's from the chef. I'm googling it while we are doing it. The chef is Firman Nunez. Oh, it's Suerte in Austin. So so I will do that. Then I will go to Nashville. I mean, Nashville has changed a lot, and it's a fantastic culinary scene. In Nashville. So there is restaurants there that are like amazing, and again, it's So 62, it's the memory that's is an issue.
Same thing. It's like I heard this joke. It's like now when I can remember something, it's like having an orgasm. You know.
Oh, that's a different topic now.
Well, I have a friend who's going to Nashville right now. She's probably just landing right as we speak. Can you remember any restaurants in Nashville that I should tell her to go take a? Because she's going there for a girls' weekend. Basically, they're going to be hanging around downtown. Like, what should I tell her to go to? Because they're going to be eating and drinking and going to the Grand Ole Opry.
Okay, so I'm going to go to my Google map because I have all my yellow dots there, and this is live, guys. You know, I'm doing that live. So I am definitely I have to find. So there is an Indian restaurant that I love called Chauhan Ale. So Chauhan. And then like Ale, A-L-E, and Masala House. So it's Chauhan Ale and Masala House, which is like really a good place to go. There is a place called Husk, Husk, which is a very good restaurant as well. There is another one called the 404 Kitchen, which is, amazing. I had the chef on the podcast. In fact, I had the chef of the Indian restaurant as well. Definitely, if there's younger crowd, like with your friends, I will go to Joyland restaurant, which is kind of a fast food, but opened by, a very good chef here in the US. And so a fantastic burger and fantastic chicken sandwich. So Joyland, it's a must, and it's cheap. And then and next to it, there's a bar which I love. It's called Attaboy, so Attaboy. And then so.
All right, well, I will pass those along. Those all sound great. And because you live in New Jersey, and I'm sure you go to New York all the time,
sure.
Like next time I go to New York, which probably won't be too long from now, probably this year I'll be back in New York City, I think. What are 3 great restaurants in New York that you might recommend?
Sure.
Per se. How about Per Se? Have you been to Per Se?
Yes, of course. I've been, but you need to bring your wallet with that one. Don't forget the wallet.
Don't forget your black MasterCard. Or your Black American Express.
If there's something on the accounts, you can use that card. Yes. So no, I mean it's you're funny. I love to I love a restaurant called Grey Wind, which so Grey Wind, one word. And that's really something like it's in near Hudson Yard. So that's a place I will go to definitely. And then what else?
There's so many. There's like
I know. It's like exactly. So, and then so I will go to in Brooklyn. I will go to Winson, and W-I-N, and then S-O-N. And then they have like a bakery in Manhattan in the Bowery area called Winson Bakery. So that's really something great to go to. Now again, I didn't think that you would quiz me on this.
Well, we do like random things.
I love like a bar called Amor y Amargo, which is in fact if you like Amari and bitters and so that's really good. And obviously you have to go to Death and Company, which is a great bar. I will go as well to a bar because there's a big trend in Manhattan at the moment, which is the Japanese influence on cocktails. So I will go to Bar Moga, M-O-G-A. That's a great place. And there's another one called Sip and Gustle, which is as well with a Japanese influence.
It's a charming name, Sip and Guzzle. That sounds great to me.
Yes, it is. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty others that I of course, and if the chefs are listening, I'm like, you haven't mentioned I'm like, so I apologize for the chefs that I know in New York, and I forgot to mention their restaurant.
Right. I mean, that looks to me like a great job, like being a chef. Like, I get it from watching these cooking shows that it's very, very hard, right? You know, but like, it seems to me those guys have a lot of fun in their jobs, right? I mean, like, no, they don't have a lot of fun?
I mean, yeah, no, they have. I mean, but I mean, people see the things on the TV show, which is great because it puts like the light on, the world of chefs and restaurant and so on. But it's it's almost like you could be a chef on a TV show and have no restaurant. It's a different kind of job, and this is as well giving like a wrong image of what the job is about, and that's why you have a lot of kids that go to culinary school that in fact comes out of culinary school and they want to be the next chef on TV because they feel that this is going to happen. I'm going to have my restaurant. I'm going to be a star and I will have a show on TV. But it takes a lot of time. It's it's a lot of work. It's you need to learn like the craft. It's all about muscle memory and. And then you need to understand the business. There are chefs that could be very creative and talented, but then, they are not maybe business savvy. And this is important because, this is a business and there's, livelihood that you have under your responsibility of people that work for you and they have families. So yes, it is a great job, but it's not because you like to cook that you should open a restaurant. It's not enough. So you need to be really resilient and have hard skin, and in order to do that job. And that's the reason why I wanted to have that podcast is to share with everyone how tough that job is, and it's not only glamorous and what you see on TV. It's for me, it's interesting to understand, what's the life behind the kitchen door and, why they wanted to become a chef. And then, what's their creative process, what's the inspiration, and then, why some are staying with one restaurant and some others are in fact developing, an empire with, I don't know, like 5, 6, 7, 10, restaurants. So I think that fascinates me. So that's why I wanted to spend more time with those individuals. And I think that's when people go to a restaurant, obviously they want to have a good time. They want to enjoy the food. But I feel that everyone now with social media is a food critic. And they need to maybe be a bit more respectful about what those people do and their life and their business.
Well, it doesn't look that glamorous to me on the reality TV shows, Next Gen and Top Chef and all that. I mean, the glamorous part is when you're sitting down to eat it, right? That's the glamorous part.
Sure.
But behind the kitchen door does not look glamorous. It looks like grueling work and
a lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure and probably a lot of heartbreak too, right? Because like you see all these dishes that go wrong all the time. It's like, oh fuck, I like left it on there for a minute too long and now it's ruined, right? I mean, like because you can't let the sauce get overcooked or whatever, right? You got to throw the whole thing out, right? If you're looking for perfection,
sure.
right?
But that's why you have an organization, and some of those chefs, for me, I compare them almost like little CEOs. The one that have like a few restaurants. In fact, they don't cook behind the stove anymore. They have like executive chefs, that they trust, that usually grew up with them, maybe with the first restaurant, and they are really like mini CEOs, and they have the responsibility. Some of them like manage more than 200 people, and it's that's, for me, it's really interesting as well, because we can learn some leadership like principle that you can apply to other type of businesses,
That actually reminds me. Actually, I do have a friend who's a chef, but he's not really a chef anymore. He works for Sony. He does like in Silicon Valley. He manages the Sony building's cafeteria, right? So like he actually does all the business, right? It's like ordering food, how much to order, what's
Sure.
the menu going to be, here's our budget, and here's the chefs that we have, and scheduling and all that.
Yep.
Really, it's a corporate job. I mean, yes, he still is the chef, but he doesn't cook. He's the head chef, but he doesn't cook. But actually, I think that like being a chef is probably a good job for the future because you can't outsource that. It can't be an AI can't do it. A robot's never going to do it. Robot can't taste, right? And
True.
you're seeing like the rise of like the upper middle class and the ridiculously wealthy class, right? Those guys just have so much money. They're like, why not have a personal chef? Well, why not, right?
Yep.
And they could travel around the world with these guys cooking food for them. I mean, like, I think probably chefing is probably like a good gig going forward.
Exactly, and I think this is very important. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that is something important that you are saying is that being a chef doesn't mean that you have to be a chef in a restaurant. Today, there is so many other ways, that you can be a chef, and you mentioned, some of them. And being a personal chef, a lot of chefs, in fact, that had a restaurant turn into this during the pandemic because, as we know, a lot of restaurants closed, at that time, and unfortunately, a lot of people left that industry, but otherwise, others, became, personal chefs.
Right. Well, I mean, that seems like a better job than working in like a really hot, like per se or someplace, right, where the pressure doesn't be excruciating. I would imagine. But enough talking about chefs. Let's talk about
Sure.
you. We gotta wrap this up here.
Sure.
Tell us about the book you're writing.
That I'm writing, the new
You're
one?
writing a book right now, yes?
Well, yes, absolutely. You know everything.
Tell us about the book you're writing.
Which is really different because I am really embarking into writing a novel and not a nonfiction anymore. And it's still in food because that's the space that I know well. So this is a murder mystery in the food industry, and it's going to be taking place in Panama City, and then with a background into the Le Cordon Bleu Culinary School in Paris, where some of my characters, met when they were students, and one main character became a French-American food journalist based in New York, and then his best friend from the time of the culinary school, he's a Panamanian, married a French pastry chef, and they are opening their restaurant as an homage to his grandmother in Panama. And so the journalist has been invited to the soft opening, for like family, friends, and media. And then at the end of the opening in the evening, the chef disappears. And that's how it starts.
Wow, I love it. I'm hooked, or I'm gripped, as my dad would say. My dad was an author, actually. He doesn't write anymore these days. But actually, he has a book, his most famous book. It's been translated, I believe, into 7 languages. It's called How to Write a Damn Good Novel. And I will hook you up with a copy of it.
I would love to.
A novel. They say it's a very good book. I haven't read it, but
You haven't read it, see? Yeah, you're like my kids. They haven't read my books either.
I have read some of the books he wrote, the fiction books he wrote. I read all of them, but I haven't read.
But not the how-to.
How to Write a Damn Good Novel, and then there's How to Write a Damn Good Novel 2, I believe. But the first one is the classic that everyone always talks about. So I'll hook you up with a copy.
I would love to. I have written like 15 chapters, so I still have probably another 10 or 12 to go. So yeah.
Well, you got to go back and edit. The editing is very important. I know that.
Yes.
Well, so that's really cool. I mean, like that's amazing. You're living an amazing life. You are really crushing it, right? I mean, like. You are like reinventing yourself. Like you're being more creative. I mean, like, what's the secret? How do you do it?
Stay curious.
What's that?
Stay curious. That's what I say to everyone. I'm very curious. I love meeting people. I love to travel and meet new culture and experimenting new things. For me, it goes through food because that's my passion. It could be something different for other people. It could be history. It could be whatever. But stay curious and don't take anything for granted. At least that's my secret. I don't know if it's a secret, but that's the one I live by.
That's your secret, and it seems to be working very well for you. All right, Emmanuel, so if people want to get hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you if they want to be on your podcast or talk about anything?
Sure.
How do people find you?
Yeah, thank you. So they can go to my website. It's flavorsunknown.com. They can go as well if they are interested with the Madagascar book. It's the title, A Taste of Madagascar.com. So, and it's on the website as well. And then for social media, it's all under Flavors Unknown. So at Flavors Unknown for Instagram and TikTok, and then under my name, Emmanuel LaRoche, for LinkedIn.
All right. Oh, on LinkedIn too. Okay, terrific. All right. Well, we will put all of that into the show notes. And
Thank you.
I really enjoyed having you on the podcast. I'm sorry that you're going to be in Istanbul 1 month before I'm going to be in Istanbul, because I'd love to hook up with you and break some bread.
but when you go to when you come to Manhattan and you said it's in the near future, let me know, because it's like really 30 minutes for me to get there.
I'll invite you out to dinner. We can go someplace good, and
Sounds
it'll
good.
be my treat. So that would be wonderful. All right,
yes.
Emmanuel, thank you so very much for joining me here
Seb,
on
thank you very
60 Plus
much.
Uncensored, and I will catch you on the flip side. All right, that's a wrap for this episode of 60 Plus Uncensored. Huge thanks to Emmanuel LaRoche for setting the tone with such honesty and insight. Now, if you like this episode, do me a favor, do Emmanuel a favor, hit the subscribe button, leave a review, and share it with someone you know who needs to hear it. Oh, and by the way, if you know someone over 60 like Emmanuel who's still out there doing big things, living boldly, working with purpose, or aging on their own terms, I would love to hear from you. Reach out at team60plus.com or join the conversation at 60 Plus Living on Facebook. I'm Seb Fry, and this is 60 Plus Uncensored. Because as we're learning, life after 60 isn't the end, it's just getting good.
Subscribe now.